There is a legume that fixes its own nitrogen, produces protein-rich seeds for up to 5 years from a single planting, and thrives in soils too poor for soybeans to survive. It adds between 40 and 280 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare each year, while yielding food. It requires no fertilizer, no irrigation, and no replanting for half a decade. Protein yield per acre exceeds soybeans in marginal conditions. Drought tolerance surpasses every major legume in commercial production. A taproot that reaches more than 2 meters deep accesses moisture that annual crops cannot touch. This is pigeon pea, Cajanus, cajan. Cultivated across India, East Africa, and the Caribbean for 4,000 years. It feeds over 1 billion people today. You will not find it in Western supermarkets, not in commodity markets, not in agricultural policy discussions, not in the crops considered when nations plan for food security. The crop that feeds soil while feeding people vanished from the conversation the moment feeding soil stopped being profitable. Pigeon pea was domesticated in central India between 3,500 and 4,000 years ago. Archaeological remains appear in Neolithic sites across the region. Ancient Ayurvedic texts refer to it as tuvaraka, not as medicine, as food. A crop integral to monsoon planting cycles, grown alongside millet and sorghum in systems designed to survive variability. It moved across the Indian Ocean roughly 2,000 years ago, reaching East Africa through trade routes. In Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania, it became a staple. During the transatlantic slave trade, enslaved Africans brought pigeon pea seeds to the Caribbean in the 1600s and the 1700s. On plantations where survival depended on what could be grown in stolen hours, it became essential. British colonial agricultural surveys from the 1800s and the 1900s described it as indispensable in subsistence systems. Officers noted its ability to grow when intercropped with maize, to provide structural support for climbing beans, to fix nitrogen, and to yield protein at the same time. For thousands of years, it was not a backup plan. It was infrastructure. Pigeon pea seeds contain 20 to 22% protein by weight. Soybeans contain more, 36 to 40%. But pigeon pea produces 800 to 1,000 to 200 kilograms per hectare in marginal soils without fertilizer or irrigation. Soybeans require both fertilizer and irrigation to approach comparable yields. The difference is not just what the plant produces, it is what the plant does while producing. Pigeon pea forms a symbiotic relationship with rhizobium bacteria in root nodules. These bacteria convert atmospheric nitrogen into forms the plant can use. In the process, they add between 40 and 280 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare per year to the soil. The taproot extends over 2 meters deep. In regions with dry seasons of 6 months, this depth accesses moisture that annual legumes cannot reach. It survives droughts that kill soybeans within weeks. A 2015 study published in the Journal of Agricultural Science measured soil organic matter in fields rotated with pigeon pea over 3 years. The increase was 35%, not from added inputs, from the root systems, the nitrogen fixation, and the plant residue left behind. The productive lifespan is 3 to 5 years from one planting. The first harvest comes in the second year. Peak production occurs in the third and fourth years. It tolerates pH levels from 4.5 to 8.4. It grows in sandy soils where soybeans fail to establish. It requires no tillage, no herbicides, and no external fertility management. It solves problems. Industrial agriculture claims require technology. It does this by refusing to create those problems in the first place. Before 1950, pigeon pea was integral to smallholder polyculture systems across colonized tropical regions. British and French agricultural officers documented its agronomic value. Then the Green Revolution arrived. In the 1960s, Norman Borlaug introduced high-yielding wheat and rice varieties. The requirement was absolute. These crops needed monoculture and mechanization, synthetic fertilizers, uniform planting, and uniform harvest. Pigeon pea did none of this. It flowers and produces pods over a 3 to 4 month window. A combine harvester requires everything to ripen at once. Pigeon pea demands selective harvest over months. It evolved to grow intercropped with sorghum, millet, and maize. Mechanized planters require monoculture rows. Polyculture is incompatible with industrial planting equipment. And then there was the economic structure underneath. Nitrogen-fixing crops eliminate the need for synthetic fertilizer. Perennial crops eliminate the need for annual seed purchases. If a farmer plants pigeon pea once and harvests for 5 years, seed companies see one transaction where they expected 5. By the 1970s and the 1980s, international agricultural research centers within the CGIAR system shifted funding priorities. Annual grain yields became the measure of progress. Research on perennial legumes was defunded or marginalized. Government subsidy structures favored monoculture annuals. There was no support infrastructure for polyculture perennials, no crop insurance, no price supports. Pigeon pea was reclassified. Minor crop, orphan legume, subsistence crop. These are not botanical terms. They are economic designations. They mean unprofitable to scale, not because it failed to feed people, but because it failed to generate markets. From the 1950s onward, Western agricultural textbooks placed pigeon pea in chapters titled Tropical Agriculture or Traditional Crops. The framing positioned the crop as primitive, something people used before they knew better. India experienced its own erasure from within. After independence, the push for food self-sufficiency prioritized wheat and rice. Pigeon pea acreage declined through the 1960s, the 1970s, and the 1980s despite its cultural importance. Pigeon pea has over 20 regional names: Arhar, Tor, Turdal, Thuvarai. There is no unified global brand. Compare this to soy: one name, one commodity code, one futures market. International development agencies in the 1970s and the 1990s promoted soybeans and groundnuts as modern legumes. Pigeon pea was associated with poverty and with backwardness. Research investment reflected this. Soybeans received billions in breeding programs, transgenic development, and corporate patent portfolios. Pigeon pea received fractions. No genetically modified varieties, no multinational seed lines. It is absent from supermarkets in the United States and Europe, despite massive Indian diaspora populations who grew up eating it daily. Yet India still produces 4.5 million tons per year. It feeds over 1 billion people as a staple protein source. But global commodity tracking systems do not monitor it the way they monitor soy, wheat, or corn. It did not disappear. It was reclassified from food to anachronism. Pigeon pea's biology is incompatible with industrial agriculture at every structural level. The indeterminate flowering habit means continuous bloom over months. Combine harvesters are designed for uniform ripening. Pigeon pea requires selective hand-picking or specialized machinery that costs more than most smallholders can afford. One planting lasts 3 to 5 years. Seed companies lose 4 years of recurring revenue per farmer. In subsidy systems where annual planting triggers eligibility for government payments, perennial crops disqualify farmers from support. Pigeon pea evolved for intercropping. When grown in monoculture, yields decline and pest pressure increases. But mechanized agriculture cannot accommodate polyculture. There is no futures market for pigeon pea, no commodity exchange listing. It cannot be financialized. It exists outside the infrastructure that determines what counts as a major crop. Industrial agriculture defines efficiency as output per labor hour. But if efficiency were measured as output per input or output per ecological impact, pigeon pea would rank among the most efficient crops ever cultivated. The crop that works without the system cannot work within it. Global agriculture applies 120 million tons of synthetic nitrogen fertilizer every year. Producing it requires 1 to 2% of the world's total energy supply. Pigeon pea offers a biological alternative already functioning at scale. The Food and Agriculture Organization estimates that 33% of global soils are degraded. Perennial root systems rebuild what annual cropping destroys. The 35% increase in soil organic matter after 3 years of pigeon pea is documentation of a process that occurs wherever deep-rooted perennials persist. Climate models project increased drought frequency across tropical and subtropical regions where over 2 billion people live. Pigeon pea's 2-meter taproot survives dry seasons lasting 6 months or longer. Global demand for plant-based protein continues rising. Soybean monoculture expands into the Amazon. Pigeon pea produces comparable protein on marginal land that does not require deforestation to access. In 2022, the war in Ukraine disrupted global fertilizer supply chains. Nitrogen-fixing legumes reduce that dependency. Meanwhile, 4.5 million tons of pigeon pea are produced annually in India alone. Over 1 billion people rely on it as a staple protein source. But as crises deepen, the crop designed for instability remains classified as minor. The system that created the crisis cannot recognize the crop designed for it. A crop that fixes nitrogen while feeds people, produces for years from one planting, thrives in drought, builds soil, requires nothing. It exists. It works. It feeds billions. But it is not unknown. It is unrecognized by the systems that determine what counts as agriculture. Industrial systems measure efficiency in labor hours, commodity prices, and patent portfolios. Pigeon pea excels in values that have no market, including nitrogen fixed per hectare, soil organic matter accumulated per year, and protein produced per unit of water. These measurements exist. They are published in journals and documented in field trials. Yet they simply do not translate into the language that drives agricultural policy. While Green Revolution crops require continuous life support, pigeon pea continues to grow where support never arrives. It survives in smallholder plots across India, in intercropped fields in East Africa, and in kitchen gardens in the Caribbean. It is not waiting for recognition. It is just growing. The question is not why we do not grow it. The question is why we only count what can be sold. The future may depend less on inventing resilience and more on recognizing that it already exists, in forms we taught ourselves not to see. Pigeon pea did not fail. It simply grows in a grammar industrial agriculture cannot read, and it keeps growing anyway. If this vault opened something for you, subscribe to Green Vault. We are uncovering the crops the system taught us to forget. The next vault opens soon.